Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Got a very special show for you today with a great friend of mine, Antoine Laurens. Antoine was the first person I did my first kind of big bivvy across the Sierras with Nick Reese and Oriol Fernandez and Brad Sander and Eric Reed. Very special time. It was an 18-day trip from the southern end of the Sierras up to the Oregon border. I met Antoine in Bir in India back in 2009, and then again flew with him in 2011 in Bir with the Himalayan Sky Safaris guys. So John Sylvester and Jim Mallinson and Eddie Colfax. Antoine's been very, very much a mentor to me. He's one of the most amazing pilots I've ever seen, actually. I mean, his ground handling skills and WAGA and tandem, and he does it all. And he's been flying for I think he started flying in 92, we've hear in this episode, so he's got way more than 20 years under his belt, and just has this incredible passion for it. He just came off a kite surfing trip, so I mean, if it's a wing, he flies it. He instructs, he does guided bivvy trips across the Alps and the Himalaya, just a really neat guy. So in this episode, we talk about how all that progression happened, what kind of accidents he sees and how they can be easily avoided. We talk about kind of some specific techniques for dealing with wind. We talk about ground handling. We have a lot of laughs. I think you're going to really enjoy this show. So without further ado, please enjoy this awesome talk with a great friend, Antoine Laurens. Antoine, this is so cool. I wish we were catching up in person instead of over Skype at opposite ends of the earth. But it's really cool to kind of circle back around to the gentleman who got me into really all of this madness all those years ago. So welcome to the Mayhem, and really stoked to have you on the show.
Well, thanks. Now, I don't know if I got you in, but at the point, we had some adventures together, so that's good.
Yeah,
nice to be here.
We had some great adventures together. Well, before you tell the audience here about your history and how you got into paragliding, I want to hear a little bit about kite surfing. I understand you've gotten the bug quite badly, and you've just gotten back from a couple months tour. What were you doing, and where were you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lot into kite surfing. It's obviously an easy sport when you come from paragliding. Like the flying skills help a lot to be good with your kite. Yeah, I started kite at the beginning of this activity in France, and it has a lot of evolution now. Like paragliding a few years ago, I guess now kite surfing is going in really specific direction. You have the people who surf the big wave. You have the people who do some freestyles. You have the strapless tendons, like everybody is going like the whole soul spirit without any strap on the board. You have these new things with the hydrofoil, which is very interesting, a new era in kite surfing. So plenty of nice enjoyment with kite surfing. It's a good thing, and also you can do that every time it's not flying, which is not bad as well.
The two go very hand in hand, don't they? It was really interesting when we got started with the Best Odyssey. That was back, in 2006, I guess. In the beginning, everybody was on twin tips. Nobody was on surfboards. And then by the end, in 2010, 2011, I don't think we had anybody riding a twin tip ever. Everybody was riding strapless and riding surfboards, and it was really cool to kind of see the evolution of the sport.
It's getting big. It's getting big, yeah.
Is it growing? So I'm kind of out of touch with it now. We've still got our boat going, but is it? It hasn't really plateaued like paragliding. It's getting bigger.
It is growing because you can see like a lot of more school arriving. I mean, everywhere in every country, a lot of beaches, a lot of spots, new spots, and they just I guess it's a big growing activities. I don't know where it will stop. It's obviously a little bit more complex to operate because other people are on the beach. So some places will have to have, kind of ruling. But it's going. It's going a lot of kiters all around them.
Mm. Well, Antoine, let's rewind the clock a little bit. With I'd love to hear about your history with flying. We could talk a lot about kite surfing, of course, but like you said, the two go really hand in hand. And I think if you're skilled at one, the other comes quite easily. But your skill in the air with a paraglider is, in my opinion, pretty unmatched. And I'd love to just hear about, you and I met back in 2009 in beer, and you were doing some really cool bivy stuff with Eddie and Jim Mallinson and John Sylvester. But take me
Yeah.
back to the very beginning. How'd you get into the sport, and how has it been such a huge player in your life?
Well, I was 17, I guess. I was passionate with climbing, rock climbing, like the modern escalade, as we call it. And we were spending a lot of time on the cliff, in the sun, and climbing is very technical and intense, muscularly and everything. And I saw this guy flying over the climbing site, evening time, sunset, when we were leaving, in fact, the climbing site. And I saw this guy really hanging around over the cliff gently, in the nice light from the sunset. And I thought, like, well, that must be cool, and really to do that after a big climbing session. And then that was it, I guess. I wanted to try after that. And it took a few years, but I slowly lost total motivation to climb, and it was all replaced by flying. And yeah, that's how
Give,
it started.
give me a year.
That was
17.
in 92, I guess, 92, 93, something like that.
So right back in the very early days. Okay, so and then
Yeah,
what?
glider were pretty simple, simply made, compared to now. But it was still not the complete beginning. But I guess my first glider was like a 12 sail, something like that. That was a Star Brand Azure, which was a French brand at this time. And yeah, I mean, I bought my first glider. I saw an announcement in a newspaper. This guy was selling a bunch of gliders, and it was mentioned down the announce only for decoration. And so I guess the price was going to be cheap. So I called this guy, and I bought my first glider, 300 francs. So it would be hardly about 50 euro today. And the guys told me, you cannot fly with that. It's only for decoration and this and that. And I said, yeah, sure. And the first things I done was I run into a field. I took my climbing harness, managed to transform my 1-point harness into 2-point to put the riser on. And then I start my first running down and first little glide. And yeah, that was the complete beginning.
Okay, and then how did you? So let's skip forward a few years. You get the flying bug bad, and you leave climbing behind. So how did the kind of progression from flying with a climbing harness to real wings? How did that all go?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I got a story for that. I mean, it's not really good, but it doesn't matter. I mean, that's about my first crash, because I was about, let's say, 100 flight. It's a good limit usually for people, and a 100 flight number. And I was flying with, there was a 301 Storm from Custom Sail, and I had a very, very tiny harness. That was like a training harness. There was absolutely no protection, but I still had a speed bar on it. And that was in my hometown. That was a restitution condition, and I kind of left the first time the site. It was late in the evening. The air was gentle, and there was a nice lift. And I just left for my first little cross country. And nobody told me how to really use the speed bar. And I remember crossing a small valley. I was totally standing up on my speed bar. I mean, my harness was up in my back, and I was really standing up on this little wooden bar. And then, obviously, but the whole wings went, a big collapse. And I must have fallen, like about 100, 140 meters, and hit the forest under. And a friend was following me, and he kind of went down, land, run back to me in the mountains, find me hanging on my harness. I was nothing, a little bit shocked, but I was about 1 meter over the ground. My harness plate was broke, and I was fine. So that was the first big things. The problem for me, like the firemen came to see me because one guy in the valley just called them, and when the firemen come and make a rescue, they have to mention it in the newspaper. So the next day, I got a call from my mom, which live 100 k's away, which say, okay, what can I do for you to help with your progression in paragliding? Because I can read in the newspaper you're on a bad landing somewhere. And then she bought me my first gel harness, which was an hurricane gel from Next, I guess. And that was my first big harness with protection, and I was very happy.
I love it. Your mom, Antoine, I need to buy you harness. What do you need?
That was a good story. And so it started a little bit rough, but I guess this is the way you learn. Obviously, it has to don't leave you too much with any problem and physical problem. But if it's happened this way, mentally, if you can pass over that, then it's always a good learning. And it's after that, I didn't have anything anymore. For the last 20 years, I didn't have any accident. I mean, bad accident after that. So that was the first one, a good one, and I will always remember it.
What do you credit that to? And I mean, that's amazing. So 20 years without a bad accident. I've seen you fly. You are a WAGA master. For those of you listening in North America, don't WAGA is a very European term, but basically just playing and the dunes and the beach and very low and very playful flying, I guess I would call it. But ground handling,
freestyle, close to the ground.
Yeah. What do you credit that huge period of time and thousands of hours without an accident?
I would say first the like you say the thousands of hours. I mean, it's let's say an average of 200-300 hours every year for this last 20 years for me, and a lot of tandem, but a lot of playing around and always having fun. Fortunately, the place where I fly it's a good place with strong condition. Often we got some strong wind, and I grew up with this strong wind. That's why I also do kite surfing. And then for sure, to practice in strong wind all the time, and then after a while you get good at it. It always goes with a few slaps on the way. Always, when I say bad accident, no bad accident, but a lot of little slap will always bring you back in the right way. I mean,
Sure.
I don't think it's possible to make a total progression without having any problem at the point. It's just about when it's happened, you just want to minimize the maximum, and to come back on it really fast mentally. That's the key. But in my progression at a point, after this first incident, let's say, the first one I talked before, it took me a good year to come back to proper flying. Like I remember really spending a lot of time behind the takeoff. I mean, we got a really round and slopey, nice grassy takeoff, and we can play a little bit ground handling behind. And I spent a lot of time there with strong wind just to get confidence with my glider. And I didn't allow myself to take off for nearly 1 year. I was just thinking, okay, once you manage to walk till the edge with your glider, with this strong wind, then you'll have the level to take off. If you can pass already the little bank and then turn these trees on the right and then pass this bush by the left, and this kind of little exercise. I've done a lot to build up my confidence, and after that, I was kind of okay.
You've been an instructor now for a long time, and I think one of the big misconceptions with people that are just getting into the sport is with ground handling is bringing the wing up and getting off the hill. How do you approach which is not ground handling, that's just launching. How do you instill a desire in your students to really take on this really critical aspect of the sport?
Yeah, that like, it's a good point. Like it's very hard in a normal way to in the school when people are paying their course when they really booked in a course to spend a lot of hours running. Everybody want to fly fast. Everybody want to have this sensation of fly. I guess a few demonstrations sometimes are useful, and then you can people have to see the magic side of it. It's absolutely fantastic. For sure, you need to have a proper place to do it. I would say some places, most part of the places in the mountains, they just allow you to take off, to leave the ground and go out. And it's not so often that you find places where the terrain is really soft and inviting you to touch your feedback, and just play with it. And I would say it's the most important thing. You have to be in osmosis with the terrain. It has to be nice and easy. Conditions have to be properly perfect for this angle of terrain, and then you can play. And then it's really it's a lot of pleasure.
Antoine, we're gonna talk about bivy flying because my first huge bivy was with you in the Sierras, a very very special trip. But before we get to that, how did you go from those early days? You take this year of not flying, you learn how to ground handle. How did you turn it into really your living? Where what was the stretch there? Because I know for many many years now, paragliding is one of the main ways that you survive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I had other choice, but you know what you can, you can. I mean, you do what you can do in a way. It's it's funny, but uh, I really loved it from the beginning. It's flying. It's incredible. Happily, I grew up not far from small tourist area where the season walk, where the big activities, like where I'm living, is one of the first climbing spot in the whole of France, and so you have a lot of outdoorsy people. And yeah, I mean, very fast we could. I mean, I went through few schools before setting up my own school, but from the beginning, it was about instructing and guiding, and then starting some tour in a foreign country. Then the tandem season, which is intense and short where I live, but which is really good because it's every day a little competition for all of us here. And then slowly, some course. I would guess a big thing has to be my travels in India, where the first time I have not been there to fly in a way, and I discover totally par hazard. I arrive in this place. The name is Panchgani, which is in the Western Ghats of India, a little bit south of Mumbai, and it was a fantastic flying place. And the next year I came back with my glider, and yeah, we start this big Indian flying adventure. A few years later, we arrive in Bir, also by hazard, and there was only, let's say, 10, 15 pilots there, at least for 4 seasons. At the complete beginning, we were there, and there was only 10, 15 pilots. That was really the beginning. And I mean, you have been there, it's simply magic, the environment over there. You can only begin to be or to think a little BV, attitude, because it's really, the terrain is really inviting. The culture of the people are really inviting. You just want to topple and everywhere on every top of mountain and have a cup of tea with the locals. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, it's magic. Is that where you first did your first bivvies, or were you doing them already in France?
No, that's in India where really I had this inspiration to okay, let's leave this site and just follow this range, and just go with it, just go with the terrain as long as we can. That's really Himalaya who brought this idea to me. In France, I didn't thought to that because we know the Alps and more for a ski destination. Okay, it's flying everywhere now. It's really, really popular. But it was I don't know. Yeah, it was not so easy to, how can I say, to BV and to find yourself in the wild. Like very fast in Himalaya, you will be landing and there will be no road access, nothing. So you'll be directly with the locals in the country. So
The film that you guys made with Eric Reed and your big bivvy from and help me out. Did you started in Dharamsala? Is that correct? And you went through to
yeah, we started in Bir. We went to Dharamsala to make the point, and then we went for the next 44 days altogether till the border of Sikkim. We stopped a little bit before the border of Sikkim. We couldn't reach Sikkim. And Sikkim is the other side of Nepal, and so you have the Indian part, the West Nepali part, the eastern part, and then Sikkim. But we couldn't finish the objective. The objective was to reach India again. So Sikkim is a state from India, and we wanted to reach this point. I guess it was a 1,600 kilometer mark or something like that. But we done 1,314, something like that between the two. Don't remember exactly.
in 46 days.
44 altogether.
44.
We had a big break in Pokhara, unfortunately, because the weather was very stable and we just spent 1 week eating cake. So it was not really part anymore of the BV, but the actual BV was the 44 days altogether, 34 days of, in fact, in the mountains totally. Yeah, no, I think I have not been under 2,005 or 3,000 meters for more than 25 days, something like that. I stay over that. I had a lot of red cells, was good.
So one of the questions we get a lot from folks that listen to the podcast is, I hear you guys talking so much about vol-biv, and they've seen John Sylvester's movies, or they've seen the Rockies Traverse or the Himalayan Odyssey, the one you guys did, and they're inspired. Where would you send people, and what skills would they need to have? I know you've been leading these kind of short bivvy trips in the Alps the last few years.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend? Because really for me, I didn't even know what it was until I came to Beer the first time, and John Sylvester and I did a little overnight bivvy back to Manali and came back, and it was just blew my mind, and that's what set me off on all this this madness. But how would you send them to Beer? Would you send them to the Alps? What would you recommend?
It's a hard question. I mean, there is so many places where you can do that. I mean, it's all about, when I think to the beer situation, it's all about going somewhere where you cannot access by other way than, maybe walking, but no other way than flying. And the magic in beer is you can be only 15 kilometers behind the main ridge, but you can be totally lost at 4,000, top landed on a grassy summit and having a conversation with the locals, and being totally out of the world. And that I guess that's the really magic part of it. It's fantastic. After where to go, it's hard to say. Himalaya is great because, as we said earlier, it's not only about flying and bivouacking. You will meet people. You will meet the locals all around, and it's a fantastic immersion in the culture. Where in the Alps you will not meet so much real locals, but you have facilities. You can drive up the next day to the next takeoff. It's pretty much organized. So it's a different aspect of BV flying in a way. It's all BV, but there is so many different branches to this sport. You can do it wild on your own, only with self-supported equipment. You can do it like we done for the Himalaya as a team. So one of the objectives was to stay together a maximum, a little bit like we done together in US. we wanted to be more in US because there was some bears and mountain lions problems. So we wanted to stay together even more. But I mean, every I would say every range you have to adapt your gear and you have to adapt your BV attitude, if I can say something like that.
Sure. Well, what about skill level? When you've done these trips, when I think about guiding a bivy trip, that makes me pretty nervous. But you and Eddie and Johnny, you guys have all kind of mastered this craft in a sense. What level of pilot are you willing to accept? And I guess, is there a level that's just okay? This isn't going to work.
Um, we might change, or I might change my decision, to go somewhere or somewhere else in function of what I can see in the sky on one of the pilot. If I feel suddenly a huge amount of, I mean, the problem often happens when you try to top land. I guess it's as the number one skill you need to be able to top land properly, safely in kind of any type of condition, and to be perfect, it would be in any type of terrain. But by flying a certain techniques or certain way in the BV, you can avoid some problem about top landing, which is having time to choose one, which is really spend a bit of time before top landing and analyzing the air mass and see how it goes and maybe wait for a good cycle to come in. So if you have a bit of time, it's different. But for sure, the first skill will be top landing. So it's not about, I mean, everybody is able very, very fast to do some distance, especially in all these big ranges. It's pretty easy usually if you use some normal route. It's happening well. The only thing is, okay, we decide to stop at a point, and then everybody has to be able to top land safe. You don't want to break your legs on the summit at 3,000 or 2,005 somewhere. That would be a little bit complicated. So that would be skill number one for me.
On the Sierra trip, the very first day, we saw how it could go bad with Brad's very unfortunate accident, but also in some ways quite fortunate. He went in very hard there and crashed and did quite a bit of damage, and then his wing relaunched, and he was able to fly down to a soccer field to a waiting ambulance. For me, it was crazy, right? Oh my God. But for me, it was really, that was kind of my first, I had done this little bivvy with John and some other, small trips, but that was my first big one. And that was very instructive for me because you and Nick were able to top land up there, which was really dicey. It was a tough spot.
I think I remember that Nick broke his harnesses top landing also in the big rocks.
Yeah.
I guess, the place was not good in a way. The place was wrong, obviously. And it's all about that. It's all about having time to choose a right place. I guess I remember this time we had a little bit of, we were not sure about the weather forecast, no?
Yeah.
If I remember.
And some very bad information.
We had some bad information and we have been totally influenced by it because we didn't feel that in the sky. And I remember once we top landed with Nick Grease, a little bit, 1 hour later, we saw 2 gliders passed over our head and it was still flying.
Yeah.
So it's funny, it's never, how can I say, it's an accident. It's always happening after a cascade of incident, You always got like one bad information, a bit of stress probably because we were on our first day, another piece of stress because this is the Rocky and this part is really full of rocks. I mean, we were used to Himalaya grassy slope and rhododendron, ridge, but that was not the case in this part of the world. And a bit of all overexcitement and top landing in a place which is wrong. So all that leads to a little incident. And happily this time it happened and Brad was only mentally scared, I guess, but not much physically.
Right, so right. How have you maintained, you said earlier in the show, you're flying 200, 300 hours a year for the last 20 years. That's a lot of hours. How have you maintained? And I can still hear your passion and excitement for the sport in your voice. You know, after all
I'm
these
still,
years,
yeah.
you love it. I know you do. I know it. It's awesome. But how how have you maintained that passion and that love? Because a lot of the guests we've had on the show, you know, their progression is often quite steep. You know, it starts like everybody, there's the magic of stepping off a mountain, and then they build skill and they start putting it together, and they, you know, Nick calls it cracking the code, and you start flying bigger distances. And I think the trap that many people fall into is, and one I've been in myself, is you start chasing distance or records, or then you get into competitions, and you know, if you're not on the podium, it's, you know, it sucks and you get frustrated. And I think people go through this kind of arc, and then they either plateau in their own ability and get maybe bored or less excited about the sport, or you know, they get hurt or they get scared. How have you kind of maintained this you know, you've had this incredible arc as well, but then you've maintained it? Yeah, how have you done that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, two times in my progression, I had some slow motion, where I kind of lose a little bit the passion. And I'm very glad, like I was able to stop a bit and analyze, and I was like, okay, I'm doing too much of this, and I should stop. And I remember when a few years after we discovered India, in a way, the Indian site and all, I was doing a lot of tandems there. There was this site, a lot of potential tourism from Mumbai and outside. And then we started this tandem business with some Indian pilots. We were locals from there, and that was great for me because that was also a moment I could go into their cultures. Working with these guys was like, I understand more. And we done a lot of tandem and for 2 months in a winter. And this time I came back to France and I had again my tandem season starting. And I was like maybe more than 400, 500 tandems in the whole year. And that was too much. And I didn't want to fly at all anymore, not even in tandem, not even in solo. I reached the point where, that's too much. And this is hard because it's happening to all of us, whether it's in competition, or like you said, like if you don't make result or whatever, or if you chase record and it's hard, and it happened to all of us. I guess it's a sport now which got, like kitesurf, so many branches that you can change for a while and do some things different. Right now, for example, I really love to leave from my house and just jump in the back forest and climb up to take off. Whether it's good or not, just it's mostly for the walk, and I get a light glider with me, and I just try to find some new places to take off, and I just try to to fly back to my place without any pretension, without going for distance, without just to make an exercise where you can do a bit of paramotoring, you can do a lot of things which are linked to flying, who can help you to not lose the passion. But one of the big things for me is like the tandem. It can be, people might thought like, okay, it's boring to do that every day, but the funny things with tandem is, in my place at least, we fly every hours of the day, and it's crazy. You can really analyze the whole air mass during a whole days. You can feel every changement hours by hours, which it was not there the last flight, and then it'll be different the next one. And it's a real game. And sometimes you're able to bring this pleasure to your customer, to your passenger, and that's fantastic when you can see a smile. And like, or a few years later, people are coming back and they say, "Oh, I flew with you 5 years ago, sorry." And that was fantastic. I'm coming back. I bring my whole family now, and this kind of thing. So yeah, it can be hard. It can be hard. I guess it's about slowing down a little bit sometimes, refocus your practice, or try something different just to come back later on it.
What have you, when you, in your years and years of instruction, and obviously all the flying you've done. Not to talk about the dark side, but I think this is always instructive. I'm sure you've seen a lot of accidents. I know you've seen a lot of accidents. Are there some telltales before they happen that you think, God, that could have been so easily preventable? What do you try to instill in your students to help them kind of navigate that potential minefield, as they start getting better and they get maybe they get over their 100 flights, they start getting some hours, they start getting an ego maybe about it, or maybe some confidence, which can be dangerous. How do you help them through that period?
Yeah, in the accident curve, there is a big point around 100 flight or 100 hours of flight. That's this point where someone is starting to fly, starting to understand the lift, and it's kind of he already done his first cross country, but that's the moment he's going to push. That's an important limit, and we always notice some accident at this point. Uh, I'm not a pushy instructor. I'm mostly try to hold back a little bit. I try to be really cautious with my students, and how can I say? You need to be a good psychologue. Like you need to be able to see very fast if this pilot is how can I say, a burnhead. He'll just go for it without too much thinking, or contrary of that, you can push him up because he's really how can I say, he's really safe in his vision and in his decisions. And then he might be pushed, and that'll be fantastic. It's really hard to judge that. I always need a few days to be able to see what I can do with people. For sure, when the whole magical conditions are there, you can see some fantastic progression. I had a student this year in Himalaya, and he was already doing some cross country, but not much, and we managed. I had only 1 week with them, so it was pretty short and intense. And I managed at the end of the day to make at the end of the course, to make a little incursion into the back. The back in beer is a big mind step in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a big elevation step, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also a big mind step for most of the people. And I managed to bring this guy a little bit inside for 1 hour, made a climb, and came back. And that was incredible, the joy they had.
Mm.
And that was risky, but I kind of stuck with this guy, from the whole week, really, really close to them, and build up this confidence. Like I say, okay, let's go. You got a good height. You follow me. We go, boom. And without hesitation, they followed, and then we climb up. Already gave them a limitation of height. Like I say, once you reach 4 or 4,002, then if you're not comfortable, you can glide back. So that's an important point. You always have to give an objectives, and already have in mind the upper part of it or the lower part of it. Like if you see the guys struggling with the first objective, then you need to come down on a lower objective. And contrary, if it's good, then you can jump up, on the next one.
I think this is just reminding me. I had the hugest smile on my face when you were talking about that, because I think part of our culture in the States and Canada is that we don't do guided trips. It's just not part. Like mountain guiding is just much bigger in Europe. It's just a very natural thing you do. You go to a new area and you get a mountain guide. And it just radically increases your safety, but also their knowledge it just helps you navigate the mountains. And I think what you and Eddie and the Himalayan Sky Safari team have tapped into, and there are many others. Toby Colombe's doing it with Passion Paragliding and many others. But I want to encourage our listeners to, especially if you're starting out, that it's just an amazing way to one just get very quality time. Like when you go to Beer for the first time, following you guys around in that terrain that's not how we fly here. It's just crazy where you can stuff a glider in the Himalayas because there isn't the wind factor typically, and
Yeah.
it's really magical. And to have that kind of handlebar right next to you, guiding you along or pulling you out of a tough place, you really learn a lot. I think it must be very stressful for you as an instructor and as a guide. But oh, I hope this guy gets out of here. But it's I want to encourage our listeners to do that, because it's kind of like going to a competition. It's compressed learning. You learn a lot in a very short period of time, don't you?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a special it's a special course that we propose. Both them and me. I'm a bit doing some my own course now, but I'm working sometime with John and Eddie still, and yeah. It's I guess one of the key is we keep a low ratio. Like we often use one guide for maximum 3 pilots. That's what I do in my Alpine adventure every year. If I have 6 customers, then I will take two guides, and I really try to have one guide for 3 customers, just because then you're available, and you're able to spiral down and go to pick someone and get back to the group, and that's easy. But more than that, it's really difficult if you want to do a good job, I guess. That would be one big thing. But yeah, it is a different approach, and it's also close of the real flying, like birds just travel with it.
Yeah.
And this is transforming this sport into a real lifestyle. Like you're traveling with this machine, and this machine is bringing you from this area to this area, and that's a full travel. So yeah, it's a special way to fly, but it's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
What can I say?
Yeah.
I'm going soon for an Alpine adventure this year. We do up the way from Nice to Chamonix, and we'll do a down the way this time, which is the first from Interlaken to Nice. So we will be a little bit ahead of you guys in the X-Alp.
Good. You can show me the way. You can send me weather reports from ahead. That'd be fantastic. And we'll put all those links to your trips in the show notes, and I'll ask you here at the end how people can get a hold of you and stuff. But before we go there, because I want to encourage people to take that trip. I know it is awesome. I've had friends that have done it, and it's just an incredible way to learn and an incredible way to see the Alps. And the Alps, let's face it, are complicated. They're not a totally simple place to go, especially if you haven't flown there much. So to do it with somebody like you is a very special treat. You talked about tandems. I'm not a tandem pilot. It's a kind of an obvious thing to do. You learn how to fly, you get into it, and suddenly, oh, well, you can fly tandems and make some money. But I hear a lot that it often doesn't help your solo flying. What's your opinion on that?
To tell the truth, at the end of my tandem season, when I pick back my solo glider, I need a good I need a good 3-4 days to get back on proper flying. Yeah, for sure. It's just we're so used to this handling resistance, which is not the same. So to go from one to the other, it always take a few days to adapt without hesitation. To say that it doesn't help, I don't agree in a way, because it'll bring the hours anyway. For me, in the summer, I do a lot of tandems. Well, this is how I make my living, so I'm a bit obliged to do that. If I could cross the Alps every week, I would probably do it, but it's a more complex organization. But the tandem is also simple and nice. And it is, you still fly, in the air mass most part of the time in our side here. It's pretty strong in the afternoon, and solo glider doesn't fly, simply. And you will only see tandem in the sky. Not because only the wind, can only be because conditions are a bit stronger, and then it's only instructor kind of flying with the tandems. But it's a good game for us. All the pilots here, we're about 20 tandem pilots in the summer, and it's a big competition. You have it's our local competition every day. You have this day where it's massively stable, and you're with your customer. Everybody is looking at each other at the takeoff, and who is the one which is going to go first and might take a risk to find a lift. If you don't find it, then you cannot sell your tandem properly. So you got this kind of days. You got the days where it's fantastically unstable, and within a 35-minute flight, you can reach up cloud base and cross the entire valley and then come back instead of scratching the cliff, under the takeoff. So it's still. I'm still excited. Sorry, about my season in tandem. It's good fun. I'm lucky to work with a fantastic team. We are 4 instructors who work together, and it's a really good team. We have a lot of love in the sky, in the van, after the walk, all the time. It's good vibes, really. I'm really happy to still have this job,
Mm. What part of flying are you most excited about these days? You've had this incredibly long career. It sounds like you've got a pretty equal passion for all aspects of it. But are there certain times of the year you get really excited?
Yeah, I guess every year I'm going to this Himalayan part that we talked about before in October, November, and this is always a big excitement for sure. I would say when spring is coming, right now in France it's winter time, and spring is starting. We already got some good condition, and then everybody's excited. Everybody has not, everyone has not fly during the winter, and everybody is going up to take off, even if the conditions are not that fantastic. So that's an exciting part. And Ouaga also, the Dune de Pilat, or any place you find some sand dune, it's something fantastic just to play around. The problem of the flying is usually when it's a little bit like diving. Once you take off, you cannot stop. You cannot stop and have a drink. I mean, you can have a drink, but you cannot stop, and like in a tennis game, or you can make a break and take your game 5 minutes later. Once you take off and you're on your distance or whatever you do, you cannot stop the whole things. With Wagas and these kind of things, even with BV, you can fly and then you can top land and have a break and go again and come back and think to some things, and okay, I'm going this way and try this time. It's a different part of the sport. I love it for that. You're not totally stuck in your harness. You can. I mean, it happened for me at the beginning. I didn't have this the camera. How you call that? To make pee pee.
The catheter. The catheter.
Well, I don't know the name exactly. The pee tube, let's say.
Yeah, the condom tube.
I was not really friendly with the pee tube at the beginning, and in beer, I was most part of the time I was spiraling down a little bit, and because I saw a nice slopey, grassy ridge, with good wind and up, I was just top landing, having a pee, and then take off again and get back to fly, which was a pretty good way to do. But now with the pee tube, it's a bit more easy.
Antoine, some specific questions, just technique kind of stuff. These are questions that people have been asking recently. You guys, I know one of the more common causes of problems or accidents in the Himalaya is when people land in a bit of wind and they have the kind of terraced, I don't know what you call those, like the terraced rice fields, and they get blown back into one of the steps, the step ups. How do you teach people to land in strong wind? What's the technique there? Because there's that's a common one. We get people asking, hey, what do I do if I get stuck in a venturi and I get blown over the back? And what do I do if I come into land and it's blowing really hard? How do I safely depower the wing and not get dragged?
Okay. I guess there is many situations in your questions. I would say there is probably a solution to each situation, but let's talk about first the top landing things. To top land, and if there is a bit of wind, Strategically, if there is no wind, you will come like a normal approach. Like you'll come from the back lightly and build up a S shape or H shape pattern to reach your small final head of the wind and to touch your aim mark. More the wind will increase, more this whole approach will shift the top of the ridge and then slowly in front, and then even if the wind is stronger, even down the slope. You know what I mean? Like the other side would be the wind is very strong. Every time you arrive in front of the ridge, you're climbing too high straight. So the way to top land and stay safe a maximum would be to make your approach by under. So you will lose some height, come very low, and then make your H-shape curve pattern by under your aim spot and climb slowly. Once you reach the altitude limit, then the altitude level of your aim spot, you throw yourself towards this spot. Again, it has to be how can I say the right place to do it. Like the most elementary things would be to choose a good place. And sometimes we push top land in a place which is not good. So if you can be far from obstacles, if you can have a slope which is not too sharp, you will always aim at the top of the slope, where there is a compression of wind, because you don't want to have any more lift. So you will position yourself very tightly between the lift and between the hair, which is how can I say lying down behind the ridge. So to be able to position yourself well, you need time. That's the first thing. You will need to have a few different passage close to the ridge to analyze, to see the strength of the wind, the strength of the breeze, see if you have to come lower, or, and it's all about time. Often accidents happen when you want to rush it. All the accident I saw with top landing was people don't want to be in the sky anymore. They just want to be on the ground, like all these other guys on the side, and they threw themselves always a little bit strong to the ridge, and it doesn't do it well. You just need to stay close. I always talk about this basketball. I don't know, you know the way you put the ball in the basketball, or you call that the basketball?
The hoop.
The hoop. Okay. I always talk about this basketball hoop, which is your entrance. You need to pass through this basketball hoop to reach your aim point on the ground. And you have first to position your basketball hoop on the right size, on the right place in function of the wind, the angle, everything. Once you got it, then you need to pass through that. So you build your approach to come close to the basketball. And normally when everything is fine, after that, you just glide and you touch. The things is you need constant adaptation. And you also need to, like I say to my students always, wait the cycle, like wait like the nature just open the doors. Many times you pass, you're in the right position, your basketball hoop is right in front of you, but it's really bumpy and suddenly lifty or sinking too much, or okay, this is not the right time. You just turn out, go again for a turn, a lift, a spiral down again, whatever, and then you come back in 10 minutes, and then you'll try again. And it's just about being patient, try always the same structure, and once I would say the hair mass, the nature is cool, the windows is open, and then you pass and everything is fine, and usually it's without any trouble, and you just touch like a butterfly.
Touch like a butterfly.
That's for the top landing, but then there is all the Venturi and blown back, and I would say there is a lot to say to every situation.
What about landing in a like a Venturi, like in the Alps? You get in a really bad situation with a lot of valley wind. Are there some advice you can give there to people that find themselves in that situation?
Yeah, it happened. It happened to us on the last alpine adventure. We land close to in the Briançon Valley. I don't know if you know this
Oh
valley, which is
yes,
linking to Italy.
I know it well.
It is?
Yeah.
There is one place you must have passed over that. It's a really narrow venturi at the bottom of the valley, and that's really. I mean, it's obvious. I would say the first mistake is you have to analyze from the sky where it can be a venturi and where the valley breeze will be stronger efficiently. That would be the first things to do. Like, and for sure you avoid that. I remember one time in the Sion Valley that you must also know. We could already spot the wind in the Sion Valley, which was so strong. We were pretty high and our forward speed were very, very low. So we decided to top land in high altitude, which is most part of the time a good solution. Some nice field in high altitude. But if you're stuck into the breeze, it's pretty hard. If you're lucky, you're stuck ahead of a clear point behind, and then you have to stay front of the wind, look at your aiming point behind you, and build again your approach, but looking at behind and flying nearly backwards. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, very scary. Not, I think the best advice there is like you said, just avoid it to begin with. I have
Yeah,
often found that I think what people really get in trouble with is if you are in that situation, you really have to be thinking fast. If you panic or because it might be quite a bit of time before you're on the ground. There's still quite a bit of lift.
yeah,
Every little thing that's in the way is going to be lift. So you have to not be afraid to turn and run, and because you can cover a lot of
that,
ground and go downwind
yeah,
and get to
yeah.
a much better place. Even if you only have a few hundred feet, you can really cover, if you're just trying so hard to get into a tiny little place with a bunch of trees behind it, it's probably not going to work. If you can fly downwind to a better place, avoiding things like high tension power lines and stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
you know
And I was going to add, like we got a sentence which I find funny. We always say like vegetarian is your friend.
mm,
So you know what it means. You better choose if you don't have any more option to land than roads and lines and trees and whatever. I mean, always choose trees. That would be the first things to do. You
mm,
will probably destroy your glider, but you have a chance.
mm.
And then the last time it happened to me, I had kind of a lot of amount of stress who come suddenly. You're like, whoa, 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 I need really to. And my first idea is always, okay, get your legs warm, and I'm standing out of my harness and just like pumping with the legs just to put the blood in it and get really warm muscles, because I'm like, okay, maybe this way I might be dragged on the ground a little bit, so I really need to be ready for that. And I spend the last 2-3 minutes before touching the ground really warming up to be ready to any
Wow.
eventuality. That's just when you said that. I mean, I remember two, three times like that. One time in the Himalaya and few other times in the Alps where I had this urge like, okay, let's warm up really quick the legs. Let's be ready for a beat up in a way, and that was fine. But like you say, you touch, then you need to put your glider on the ground. You need to be ready to be dragged, to roll ball, like we say, and stop the flying. But it's hard. Like the most important is to not make the mistake. Like you have to think ahead of that before it happens.
Yeah, I mean, and typically in Europe, when the valley winds are very strong, in July and August, the trick there is just to stay high, and
Yeah,
if you're not going to make a crossing top land, and wait for a better moment.
yeah. I mean, and you can even top land. But I mean, often more you go in the evening and more the breeze is strong. But it's it's always the same. Often accidents happen because even on I'm in the flatlands here in south of France, and still we have accident coming. Like the guy didn't want to walk 200 meters, and he just wanted to reach the little field close to the road. But this field was a little bit tricky, and there was a line and this and that. And often it's just a little laziness who make us having such stupid accidents sometimes.
I, I have to.
Yeah, I mean it's priority has to be safety. So because it's so easy in a flight, you're in a 2 hours flight, but just in 2 minutes, just at the end of the flight, then you have a little things, and then it's the next 2 months are not.
I have to I have to admit to my own quite embarrassing moment like that in the X Alps. The last night I was trying to catch Ferdy. He had flown over me that day because I thought it was unflyable, and I was just sitting. I'd gotten a really bad situation, and exactly where you're talking about, south of Briançon and that ski area. I think it's Vars or Vals or something, and got caught in that lee side of that terrible valley wind, and really scary. And anyway, ran up the hill on the other side and took off and had this beautiful evening flight, that 60K down towards Monaco. Nauter or something. I can't remember the name. There's a little tiny, very narrow little canyon that goes all the way out to the coast.
Right.
But you have to land by 9 p.m. So at 8:45 p.m. I was at 3,000. It was high and beautiful, and the sun is setting. It's just gorgeous, but you have to be on the ground by 9 or you get penalized. And so I'm just full bar and beautiful and just gorgeous air, and I'm imagining in my head that I'm flying over Ferdy, and as I got down towards the ground, 8:58, I've got 2 minutes, and I've got this huge field, massive, beautiful, fantastic field that all I have to do is turn into. There wasn't even really much wind. I just have to turn and land, but there's this little tiny postage stamp, 200 meters down the road. It was just a little tiny bit. I mean, literally 200 meters closer to Monaco. So of course I go for that, and I am an X-Alps pilot. I won't screw this up, and I have to do this really whippy spiral into just to make it between the house and the fence and the road, and just exploded my harness. I had a very lightweight, X-Alps pair harness, just exploded it. My last flight, you're so stupid. I was fine, thankfully, but just silly stuff like that is so easily avoided.
That's important. Yeah, you need to stay clear always.
For sure. Antoine, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. How can people, before we end here, how can people find out more about your alpine adventures and your trips in the Himalaya?
Well, I'm not really good at communicating. My friend know that I'm not the best communicators. But anyway, it's good. It's a good filter, like you then get the people who really want to do it, which is not bad.
Perfect.
But no, they just can simply send me a mail at Antoine_Laurens at yahoo.fr. That would be the simplest. If not, we have a Facebook page for the Alpine Adventure. And mostly also people contact me directly I'm doing a lot of this 3 days BV course, in the Himalaya. I kind of changed my way to instruct there. I like to take people, like small group, 2 or 3 guys maximum, and then we just go for 2 or 3 days. So like 2 nights out, something like that. And this is small, a little bit like you done with John, the same things. Instead of having a proper long 10 days course, so you always got some bad weather, whatever. Now with 2-3 days like that, we really focus on the good days, and we just go for not with a big objective of distance. That's never my big things. Like I said earlier, I prefer stop the fly a little bit earlier and have the time to find a nice spot and make your top landing safe, and that's the most important. So this kind of trip, we do that a lot now in Himalaya in October, November. And then the Alpine Adventure is running every year now for the last 4 years. Last week of June and first week of July, we do always up and down the way. We are fully booked for this year, unfortunately, but we'll do it next year again.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put all that information in the show notes so people can have it and they can try to book you up next year. But that's fantastic, man. That's a good problem to have. Well done. And then I expect to hear from you out in front of us when we're in the X Alps. If you'll give me some of your own private information and not to anybody else, that'd be great.
Why not? I'm not going to fly at the same speed. We have a small objective average kilometer per day, not compared to you guys. But thanks a lot to having me on your podcast. That's really good, and I hope it helps
it's
who want
gonna
to progress. Yeah.
it's fantastic, Antoine. So great to talk to you and catch up. We need to do this more often, and I can't wait to see you this spring as we always do. And thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed that. Always great to sit down with an amazing friend and pilot and get his advice on so many critical things. All the things we talked about in that show are in the show notes of cloudbasemayhem.com. Underneath the podcast link, you'll find the links to Antoine's alpine adventures and his Himalayan sky safari adventures and all the things that he's up to. So please go in there and check that out and review some of the things we talked about in the show. As always, all we ask for is $1 a show. If you want to support the podcast, this is a listener-supported podcast. We ask for $1 a show. That goes a long way into making all of this possible. As you can imagine, this takes a ton of time. Stoked to do it and stoked to bring you this information. You can find the links to donate either through PayPal or through Patreon on the website, cloudbasemayhem.com. Patreon is a new way we have to support the show where you can kind of set it and forget it and be rewarded for doing so. So that's a lot of fun. If you can't support us financially, no big deal. There's many other ways to support the show. You can talk about us on Facebook or the social medias. Tell your friends. The whole reason this is out there is just to share knowledge and make all of us safer and better and allow us to fly farther. So tell other people about it. Give us a rating on iTunes. Those ratings actually go a long ways to bumping us up and allowing other people to find the show. So thank you very much for that. I am heading out on a UK little short film tour with North Unknown. You can find information on that through Cross Country Magazine and on their website and on my website. We've got a few fun days planned in the UK the first week of April. We've got a couple days of master classes, they're calling it, up at Jockey Sanderson's Flight Park in the Lake District, where I'll be talking about vol-biv and expeditions and what to pack and how to be safe and how to top land and hopefully get a couple days of good flying with y'all out there. So check those out. I think Saturday's sold out, but we've still got some slots on Sunday. And then we've got a venue hopefully over in Sweden and also in Oslo to Shore North Unknown. And I'll be introducing the film and telling some kind of fun backstories about Dave and I's adventure across the Alaska range. So hope you'll join me for those. Again, all that's on the website. And thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.